We're the new Jacobin Club.
And you're watching Brutally Delicious with Bruce Moore.
Brutally delicious!
Welcome to Brutally Delicious. I'm Ashley Page.
And I'm Bruce Moore. Today we've got a great show in store for you. We've got Malik from the black metal band Melechesh, and if you stay tuned, you can see what he's got in store for us today. Malik, thanks for joining us today, man.
Thanks
Appreciate
a lot.
it. Glad to have you. Ready? We'll just go ahead and get started.
Sure.
All right. You guys have been, Epigenesis has been out for a little bit of time now, but and you've done quite a bit of touring. But let's revisit it for a second. What is your writing process like? You guys all write together? I mean, you guys are spread apart geographically, correct?
Yeah, we've been spread around, like, geographically for quite some time now. So we started in Jerusalem in 93, 94, and then 98, Ash and I went to Holland, and I went to France, but we still managed to continue the band this way. So the writing process, Ash and I is the main writer, composer, and arranger, and I co-write certain tracks, so like 20% of the album I co-write with him. And we write in different ways, which is important for us because we like, first of all, the album has to have a lot of variety.
Right.
And the way you accomplish variety is by writing out songs in different ways, in different formats.
Okay.
So some will start off as a jam session between Ash and I and the drummer that will morph into a song.
Over in Amsterdam.
Right. And we'll keep that because we'll know that it had like a live, improvised feel. Others will be me and Ash and I jamming, and we do that a lot. Like I would go to Holland, spend 10 days, or for the album I would spend like a month,
right,
and then go back to the US and spend another month. And that's more me and him writing tracks together. So it's like two guitarists working together,
right,
and that will accomplish a certain vibe. Others will be like songs that he writes alone, like we'll demo track later on. And I think this variety adds like. You get different textures, different vibes, different ideas. So we varied the writing process in order to have like a variety of different tracks and different feels.
When you guys are you writing with the live setting in mind, or are you guys writing songs just for the sake of songs?
Ironically, no. And so what we usually do is after everything is done, Ash and I will record a demo with we program the drums.
Right.
And we'll always leave a track or two that we'll finish writing in the studio. We do that on purpose. It's very stressful, but you get like a real live feeling to it. But we never think of the stage for some. I mean, we do when you write riffs, you do, but you're not thinking of the whole song. Like, how would that sound live? And surprisingly, when we play them live, we're like, shit, whoa! You discover a whole new feel to it.
Right. You guys have a whole bunch of different instrumentation going on as well. Is that hard to translate into the live setting, or does that translate fairly easy?
Well, one thing we do for the live setting is that we rethink the song. So we'll edit it. We'll change certain guitar lines. I mean, minimal changes that you might not perceive.
Right.
But it's important. Once you go to the album, you go in with a certain mindset. And then once you go live, you have to change that mindset. I mean, in an album, if you look at the computer, you might have 10 guitar tracks. You might not hear it, but there'll be little details here and there. But you can't have 10 guitar tracks live. So you'll have to go for like a cruder version. So we'll think about it live, but we know that we'll have to sit together, tweak a few things to get that real vibe. So yeah.
Okay. Many of your songs are pretty intense and energetic. How does it make you feel when the energy you perceived in the studio comes to life in front of a crowd?
It's great. It's really
a big payoff.
Yeah, it's a wonderful payoff. I mean, unless the crowd doesn't react, and then it's no payoff at all. But I mean, even like sometimes you have a new audience. You also have people who like heard the band just recently, and they'll automatically react because there's so much energy and vibe and groove in the songs we write, and it's a great payoff. It's really, really. I mean, if you have the right conditions, of course.
Now that you've had a little bit of time to sit on it, are you still satisfied with the outcome? Is there anything you'd like to have gone back and changed? Like, damn, I wish I would have.
There's always, I mean, but if there's always something you want to change, but if you do that, you'll never write albums. They come with a certain deadline, and at one point you're just gonna say, stop.
Let it go.
Yeah, or else you start going nuts. And you're in the studio, you start hearing things that are not there.
Right.
You start screaming at the engineer, and the engineer's like, "Okay, guy, you need to take a fucking
break."
break." Yeah, because. And we all know that, with time you start knowing that, okay, we're getting those typical hallucinations that musicians get when you spend too much time in the studio. So at one time, at one point, you just have to say stop.
Okay.
And we did that, and we of course, you could always go back and change things, and that's why I told you we change things live.
Right.
Because we're like, okay, if we can't change it now on the album, we can change it live.
Right.
So yeah, no, I'm very, very, very happy with it, and I think it just represents it's just the point where we're at now. It represents really Melechesh after some 17, 18 years of work. It's exactly the kind of album we wanted to write now, so I'm very satisfied with it.
I'm going to jump ahead then because you just
Sure.
kind of tapped on it. Ever imagine you'd be doing this 18 years later?
No. I mean, I remember when the band started, we were just like in Jerusalem, a bunch of young guys wanting to start a black metal project, which was very new.
Right.
Like early 90s, grunge was taking over.
So back in that time, there was like Venom? I mean, what'd you have going on back then?
We had some of the first like Scandinavian bands.
Right.
We had Bathory. I mean, for us, that was the main inspiration. Like, I think when Ash died, so the guy who founded Melechesh,
Right.
and almost my blood brother, when he heard Bathory the Return,
Done.
it just triggered something, and the idea was to morph that with Middle Eastern drum patterns and guitar scales. So we just had an idea, and then that idea has been evolving for 18 years. I didn't expect that idea would keep on morphing and changing for
Right.
18 years. That's the wonderful part of it.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm pleasantly surprised.
That's quite... in this business, it's quite amazing that,
But there's a
you've
lot
got
of
that
will.
kind
There's a lot of will and a lot of hard work,
Right.
and that's what keeps it going.
Right. If you had not become a musician, what other career path would you have liked to attempt?
A chef, as I'll try to prove in the rest of the show. No. Well, I'm not a full-time musician. I'm finishing my PhD, so I will also be an academic. Part-time academic, part-time musician, part-time... The idea is just do many things.
Right.
Don't do one
Renaissance
thing.
man.
Well, I feel I'm flattered. I'd love to be a full-time musician, but, it's just... If our music paid a bit more, then I would be a full-time musician. And it's hard to have all the band to be, like, full-time.
Sure.
So some members can, but...
I talked to through a lot of these interviews. I talked to a lot of people. I mean, even Chuck Billy from Testwood. All these guys, they all have something else going on inside.
Right, and
do this because you love it, and
Exactly.
then if it pays off, wonderful. But if not,
And you want it to pay off to a certain extent because you're like, I'm not gonna be working for 20 years so that promoters can get money and I get
Right.
nothing. But you're doing this because you love it. At the end of the day, that's the real reason you're doing it.
Right.
It adds something to your life. It makes you a better human being based on whatever definition of human being you have.
right or better.
Yeah, or better, exactly. I guess my mom won't agree, but I would think this makes me a better human being.
Right. You guys are sort of like the predecessors to some of that, though, because there's a lot of that folk metal stuff going on now, but you guys were doing it back in 91, 92.
I hate the term folk metal. I hate it with passion. I like folk music. the kind of oompa loompa folk metal that's
Right.
going on, not my thing.
Right.
And not something I like to associate Melechesh with. At the time when I remember by the second album, Gin, people were calling it folk metal, but at the time the label was vague enough that you could just throw in, Bathory counted as folk
Right.
metal. But Bathory sounds amazing.
Oh, yeah.
Oompa Loompa, sort of like happy medieval
Right,
people
drinking.
drink. Not my thing. It's just I don't get it. It's fine, people could do what they want, but that's not something I associate Melechesh with.
Right.
But we are inspired by folk music or like traditional, meditative, mystical music. Like the category of folk is very limited if you're referring to
Oh, yeah.
the traditional music that inspires us, be it Arabic, Persian, Turkish, or Indian. So there's a lot of inspiration from that we turn into metal. That's the important transition to make. Is guitars and drums and bass guitars are your essential ingredients, not fiddles and other
Accordions or whatever, right.
Which again, I'm all for artistic creativity. It's just not something that
Right.
we do.
No, I
or
get
that
you.
we rely on.
In 100 years from now, what will the music history book say about Melechesh?
Well, 100 years is a stretch, but I think when we talk about how will we talk about this when we're old fucks sitting there and like handicapped in a chair, barely being able to move, and not say anything about headbanging.
Right.
What matters for us, say like, I want people in the next, let's call it, generation of musicians to say like, oh, remember that cool band Melechesh? let's listen to this to like draw some inspiration. Just like I listen to bands now, like let's say example that comes to mind, like Nocturnus. You know, like bands they had a couple albums, stopped playing, but people still know there was a band there that did something original that stood out. That's what I want for Melechesh to say. I don't want it to disappear and people forget about it.
Right.
It's like people will go back to it as, oh, that cool band that mixed these different traditions with metal and
Right.
And that continues to be a source of inspiration.
Okay. That's all I've got. Well, thank you
Cool.
for taking time, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.
Right up.